Hello and welcome to the Film Whisperers, where two movie nerds talk all things film with a contemporary lens. My name is Saj.
I'm Alice.
Alice, we have a very different topic that we're going to tackle today. And you suggested this topic.
Vampires.
Vampires. What made you want to unpack this today?
It's just, I've got a lot of friends who are going back and rewatching all these vampire films. And I'm curious why they're still obsessed with vampires. I definitely was as a kid. I don't know about you.
Oh, yeah, no, same.
Yeah. And I was just curious why it has a hold on us. Yeah.
It's a very interesting point. I think thinking back to my childhood, I feel as if the want to dress up as a vampire was always very appealing as well. And I think a vampire costume is also easily accessible. So I feel like it's always an easy go-to as well when it comes to dress-ups.
Yeah.
So maybe over time, the constant presence of vampires, both in pop culture and in accessibility for costumes, has probably made it just a topic that's just always around. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, all you really need is teeth.
Yeah.
And
a cape.
And having a cape is better if you want to go that classic castle vampire. But that's an interesting point. That it is popular, and anytime I've worn a cape, I've done the whole vampire thing.
Yeah.
Whenever you see bats as well, you know.
Yeah. Let's have a think of vampire films that we like and how the vampire movie genre has evolved over time.
Okay.
So do you have a favorite vampire film?
Probably I like the Underworld series.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's probably my favorite. I've got a few. What about you?
I can think of one.
Yes.
And that's this film from the 80s called Fright Night. They redid it, I think, in the mid-2000s, but the original was really, really, I'm going to call it, just say cool. And I think what I liked about it was a film that had a teen angle of what if you live next door to a vampire. And I thought that was pretty interesting. And I think at the time as well, when I first saw it, vampire films are always this sort of the classic hood thing with it was set in the 1700s, and this had a nice modern day twist to a vampire story.
Yeah, kind of bring it to modern days, like what actually would be like.
Yeah. So that's why I liked it, and I think I was probably not meant to have seen it at a young age, but I think I was around 11 when I saw it, and I just thought it was really cool.
I definitely was quite young when I think the first vampire film I saw was Bram Stoker's Dracula. With Keanu, yeah. And I remember being like, "What is this?" And again, that's a classic vampire with the cape in the castle and the virgin that he's trying to suck the blood of.
Yeah.
So, but it's just like there's something fascinating about vampires.
Yeah.
What do you think it is?
I think there's a couple of things there. Firstly, probably the stagnation of youth. Let's start with that, I think.
Eternal life.
Yep, the eternal life. I think as a society, we are youth obsessed.
Yeah.
And everyone wants to look younger. Everyone wants to stay the same shape, stay the same way. And the vampire story is usually someone just stuck that way for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
I think there's also the feeling of outcasts as well. And I'm going to be honest, and I'm stereotyping here, but most of these people who I know that love vampire stories, they're usually people who are a minority. So they're either women or gay men or people of color who can recognize the feeling of being outcast and ostracized. Because I don't know any straight white men that like vampire films. I mean, I'm just being really honest here. Straight white men watch Mad Max and Star Wars.
Yeah. I think it would depend on the type of vampire film. So we've got different types of vampire films. We've got
Tell me.
We've got romantic vampires. We're thinking like Twilight. I think, Bela Lugosi's Dracula. They're more romantic. Even like we don't like to talk about TV shows, but obviously Buffy.
Oh, you have to. You have to.
Yeah. It's got a massive impact on Vampire Story. It had the action in Vampire and made you think about what the vampire story is. It has the story about outcasts with Angel, etc. So that really goes into all the different types of things.
Yeah. But at the same time, I think with Buffy, it was I wouldn't call it a vampire story. It was more of her defeating evil.
Yeah, she's the main story. Yeah. But we do get to have little stories about the vampires as well. That's all I was going to say, that we get to think about where they're coming from. And they've got this massive love interest. So we have these romantic vampires, and then we have like the monstrous vampires. So 30 Days, 30 Nights, Nosferatu, obviously, OG. They're like the monstrous, in the shadows, just pure evil.
Yeah.
And then we also have the action vampires. So you've got those ones like in Blade. I think they're all kind of 90s. So Blade, Underworld, I think that was like 2000, 2001.
Yeah.
And even, what was it? Dawn
of the Dead.
No, Until Dawn.
From Dusk Till Dawn.
From Dusk Till Dawn, yeah. Even From Dusk Till Dawn, they're a bit more monstrous. But yeah. So we've got different types. And I think the more action, scary monster vampires, maybe the more the mainstream kind of vampires. And then we've got people who are obsessed with like Twilight that are maybe more like what you were saying, more they can see that they're the outsiders.
Yeah. Did you like the Twilight franchise?
No, I didn't understand why people liked it so much.
I didn't get it either.
And I read the books.
Oh, did you?
And because it was everywhere and people were so obsessed with it. So I was like, okay, I'll read this. And then I watched the movies. And I think the first one I watched and I was like, oh, this is kind of cute.
Yeah.
But I was just over it by that stage.
Yeah.
I think vampire films were just pumped out so much by that point, and I'd had so much exposure to it, so I was a bit over it, and I wanted something different. I didn't want that romantic vampire. I want that scary action vampire. Yeah.
I'm gonna agree. I was never a Twilight person. Mm-hmm. I remember specifically being really excited about the first film because I thought, oh, this has so much hype. It's got to be good. Yeah. I remember watching it in the cinema going, wow, this is shit. Like, it was so badly done. The acting was terrible. The storyline was just like, why? I remember thinking, why are people obsessed with this? At the end of the day, it was girl falls in love with the bad guy type thing. And it's just been recycled to the point where it was not unique.
I think this is common with the vampire films because we do have this, usually an innocent young woman who becomes obsessed with an older man, usually much older, like 100 years or something. I think that's what, I don't know how old he was, but I'm guessing around that. And they have this journey in this film where won't they kind of get together. She wants to be with them so badly because they're so alluring, even though they're going to might kill her or take her to the dark side. And it's her giving up that her virginity or her pureness or whatever for this dark man to consume her.
So just on that, do you reckon, and I'm only basing this off conversations that I've had with my friends, and my sample size is not big, but there is a female obsession with the bad person.
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know. What came first, chicken or the egg? Is it just because we've been forced this? Or is it because we seek this kind of story? I think perhaps it's a power thing.
Okay.
I'm going to be very sexist right now, so I don't know. I'm just speculating here.
Yeah.
Okay. But maybe it is this thing which we've been taught that we should look for powerful men to protect us, but they can also they're also dangerous. So it's a little bit exciting.
There you go. So why? Because what really wanted me to ask you that question is because you said he could kill her, which is true.
Yeah.
But you're still sort of drawn to this storyline, and there's something quite titillating about this woman being with a guy that can still suck her blood and kill her.
Okay, I'll be real with you.
Yeah.
Any man can kill a woman.
Yeah.
It's just part of our reality.
Yeah.
So there's just one which is more to the forefront.
Yeah.
But that's always a thing for any woman going home with any man.
Yeah.
It's always a issue. But you're right. I wonder if it plays up on that. You know, okay, let's just make him sexy and kind of fetishize this reality. I don't know.
So do you reckon that's probably a draw card for these vampire films?
Maybe. Oh no. Yeah. Possibly.
Because you're making this.
The other thing about this is though the man is very obsessed with this woman as well. So I think there's different types of endings for these vampire films, but a lot of the time they want to make them their bride, their vampire bride, and so they're going to turn them, and then they're going to live together forever. So there's something quite romantic about being wanted so much. Maybe that's something that people love about vampire films, to be desired so much, and that you are going to be taken care of at the end of the day by a very rich, older, strong man.
And that gives someone who can give you youth for the rest
and keep
of
you beautiful, keep you at your element.
Yeah.
Not really, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You still get to sharpen your mind, but your beauty stays. Yeah.
Wow, that is interesting, isn't it? And I guess so. You had the 3 streams of vampire films.
Yes.
So you covered the first one around the romanticism.
Romantic, yeah.
I think with the action one, except for Blade, I don't see many vampire stories where the vampire themselves are the main lead, or they're the lead, because a lot of the time they're the species getting destroyed. So like the Underworld series or Van Helsing.
Underworld's like a bit of a difference, because we've got the Lycans as well, like the werewolf characters, and then the main chick, she is actually a vampire. So I guess that would be kind of more like Blade, and it came after Blade. So I guess if we didn't have Blade, maybe we wouldn't have had Underworld, but it was like very a popular film trope, which I love this kind of film. But yeah, apart from that, we don't really see in the action the vampires as the lead characters.
Again, we're going to talk about TV. Well, if you talk about TV, I think Angel is definitely one.
Yes.
Oh, and did you ever watch True Blood?
No, I was over vampires, but Twilight like destroyed it. And I was like, I'm not interested anymore.
Because I watched True Blood from start to finish.
Yeah.
And again, True Blood was interesting because there were the werewolves as well. Mm-hmm. And it was a very similar storyline where we had the main character, who was played by Anna Paquin, in an amazing performance, because she did this amazing southern accent, and she played this character called Suki, and she started falling in love with, pretty much it was a love triangle. So there were these 2 vampires who she was sort of interested in, and it was, well, which one will she pick? And anyway, with that. So why did I bring that up? I think it's because we saw a different side of vampires, and then we saw the werewolves come into play as well. And I think that's an interesting thing as well, with how vampires always have a werewolf storyline.
I think they live in the same kind of world, right?
Yeah.
Usually. So it's usually one with the other. If vampires exist, why wouldn't werewolves exist too?
Yeah.
And it is that thing where they've both been... They were human, and then they were infected in some way, and now they can transform and they can heal.
Yeah.
And I think werewolves last forever as well. It's pretty much the same thing, right? Except they're instead of more of a cat-like, bat-like, they're dog-like.
Another thing I feel in terms of what draws people to these vampire films is the mystery that these vampires create around themselves, because a lot of the time we see vampires as someone who is mysteriously behaving in a certain way. Because they cannot leave the house during the daytime. They only can come out at night, and you always sort of sense that, who is this strange person? And I think that mystery around that character build-up is something that people find appealing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I think, again, it's always men that get to be those characters.
It's usually, if it's a film about an alluring vampire, it's usually a male.
Yeah.
Which is a bit of a bummer, but we get the odd female one, but it's usually someone that the male's already turned. He's like lackeys or something, if you're thinking like Bram Stokes or something.
Yeah.
What did you think of What We Do in the Shadows?
The film was so funny. I've not seen the TV show, but the film was, you know what, that's a really good example of how they sort of turned the vampire genre on its head and made it comedic, because vampire films usually are not funny.
No.
They're quite serious.
Yeah, they might have some campy element, but usually just only if they're like the really spooky ones and you get that little bit of comedy sprinkled throughout.
Yeah.
But yeah.
What We Do in the Shadows was brilliant. I would say, it's got to be one of the funniest films I've seen.
Came out at a perfect time because we had so many vampire films, and it was just flooded the system. And I was like, I had vampire fatigue. It was great to see someone, especially a New Zealand film, that just poked fun at how ridiculous vampires are and what the reality of vampires would be. Yeah, it was perfect. Yeah. I love that film.
What do you reckon is the history behind the stories with vampires? So they cannot come out they only come out at night, or garlic makes them garlic can destroy them, or they cannot be seen in mirrors. Is it from Bram Stoker's Dracula?
I think it's just folklore. It's just built up like throughout time, because we've got lots of different film variations on these powers. Like some of them, like clearly the one that you can't see, they have no reflection because they're dead, but they're undead. And then the garlic, that must be from folklore, right? That must probably be from the old villages and stuff. Oh, we'll hang some garlic around our necks and stuff, and that'll stop them. Because why? I don't know. Maybe someone just didn't like the taste of garlic, and they're like, even vampires wouldn't eat you if you think the garlic. I don't know.
And the cross as well.
And the cross too. Yes.
So I wanted to touch on that. I think another thing that's appealing with vampires is it's linked to evil. So you think of, and I grew up Catholic, so when you think of Satan or the devil, it's usually someone with long teeth, or the long canines. And I think when you have these vampires that have these long teeth, you immediately then associate it with religion. And I think mainly Hollywood, because it's America, they're obsessed with Christianity. To see this character where you're reminded of the devil, I think is something that's quite appealing.
They very obviously have been turned by the devil. And they're just doing very bad things, and they can't stop now. They've turned. They can't go back to being good until they basically die.
And I think the cross as well, where they
it burns their
skin. So I think that's another link to religion that is kind of interesting.
And they can't go into churches and stuff too.
That's right. Yes, they can't.
Really, like if you go bad, you that's it. You have to stay in the shadows. You can't be around people. But they do go around people at the end of the day, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Why do you reckon there is not many female vampire stories?
We don't really know, but I think it's just sexism, right?
Okay.
The vampire is supposed to be all powerful. They're not going to put a woman as all powerful. I guess it depends who makes the film. So most of the films were made by men in those times. So we had men that were all powerful, and maybe culturally as well, they were thinking it's not going to be as believable if it's a older woman. Maybe they're not going to be as desirable as well. Because it is interesting, right, with the vampires, like the Count Dracula. Often he's older. It's like, okay, so he was older and then he became a vampire, but he still played as very sexy. But I think if it changed and it was Countess Dracula, I don't know if that's, it would be Countess, right? Whatever. Maybe that wouldn't be seen as sexy. Back in the day when they first started making these films and they said it, this is the film trope. I don't know, but we should make a film.
I'm going to say,
Let's make Count Dracula.
Dracula.
Countess Dracula.
Have you seen the film Vampire Academy?
No.
So that was one where it was a largely female cast, and it was pretty much as the title suggests, it was like a school of vampires, and the two main leads were female. But it would not be in the romantic stream. It would be more probably in the action, because they learn to fight.
Even Twilight, right? it is a mix of the males and the females. So
True.
I feel like it's definitely like changed from what it was before.
Yeah.
All like the 30 Days and 30 Nights. I think a bunch of films. It's usually males and females, except it's usually the male is the protagonist.
Yes.
The male roles are usually the protagonist. It's also interesting how the story's kind of evolved. So if we talk about like the classic, even Nosferatu or something, the vampire's entering the room, it's getting the woman to open the window and let him into a bedroom and suck the blood. And then we kind of see like a change and like evolution. Like so Interview with the Vampire, it's more two men as well, which is interesting why that changed. I mean, there's so many reasons. What do you think?
You have to evolve cinema, and they probably had a look at, well, who are the cinema goers at one point, and they probably thought, so like for example with the Interview with the Vampire, Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise were probably the most attractive and appealing actors at the time. So they just went, well, we gotta, if we're gonna get these two in a film together, it needs to look like it can draw audiences. So that's why they probably did that. And then it then evolved into Twilight. I know Twilight came probably 20 years after, but it went away from the capes to this sexy love interest that women are drawn to. And I just think it's the evolution of cinema.
Because when we think about vampires, when they change the other humans to become vampires, it doesn't matter what sex they are.
Yeah.
And so that kind of gets taken out of the equation. And so I think modern day vampires, we see a lot more that it's a mix. Like, because what does it matter if they're male or female? If they're changing anyone, it doesn't matter about, like, because it is a way of, it's their kind of sex almost, and they have sex with everyone. Like that's how I imagine vampires. They're just very sexual beings that are like just kinky and like having fun and blood play.
Yeah, you're right. And I think that's also, it's interesting to touch on the queer nature of some of these vampire storylines, because I guess gender doesn't matter. And the act of biting someone on the neck or the lead up to it, it is quite a sexual thing. And if you remove gender from it, a woman can do it to a woman, a man can do it to a man, a man can do it to a woman. Anyway, a woman can do it to a man, but it's just that act in itself can be seen as something sexual. So that queer narrative, it plays quite perfectly into it. Yeah,
exactly. That's so true. Even the older ones when they're getting bitten, even Buffy, I'm thinking Buffy, but it is that sexual sexual nature to it.
To me, it's the neck bite, because I mean, caressing someone's neck in itself is quite sexual in nature. And then you add this element of blood sucking or whatever you want to call it. And then it just adds to that.
And it's also interesting, actually. I always think about people, they get like the love bites. Is there another word for it?
Hickey.
Yeah. So that's called a love bite. But yeah, hickeys and stuff. When people have them, they always like hide them and stuff, but it's always here, right? Like, and so people hide them, and then we see that in vampire films. Like they'll wear a scarf all of a sudden and stuff to hide their sexual shame that they've, let someone bite them.
Yes, so right. I also want to quickly talk about Buffy, only because you mentioned Interview with the Vampire, and then we spoke about Twilight. And I think what came in between is Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And that lasted, 7 seasons? And I think it had a massive cultural impact in terms of, female leads and everything. Just with that, I think it did, those 3 streams that you spoke about, it combined all 3. Because there was a love interest, there was the action, there was the scary bit. And it was, I would say, it was genius storytelling.
Buffy really let you explore all the different types of narratives of vampire. And we'd have like the very scary episodes, we'd have the kind of campy episodes, the romantic episodes. It kind of just opened up all the different ideas about what is a vampire, or why do we care about vampires. And I think we've seen that now in modern day films about vampires. For sure.
Do you reckon that the next generation, so I'm saying this as a millennial, so I'm guessing the Gen Zs and the Gen Alpha, do you reckon they will get to see something that's very similar to Buffy, or do you reckon it's a thing of the past that probably will just be forgotten and only millennials like us will be obsessed with it because we grew up with it?
I think that there is a little obsession with Buffy. I think like especially her fashion and everything, it's really popular. Will there be something modern?
Yeah.
I think so. I think they're constantly making vampire shows, right? Like teen vampire shows. I kind of ignore them. But
yeah, same.
Isn't it, like Vampire Academy? It's not really, but yeah, I think they'll have something very similar for sure.
Because the feminist agenda I thought was really strong with Buffy.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And that's the other thing. Well, which Buffy did differently. She wasn't a love interest. She was a love interest, but she also wasn't. She destroyed them, and the whole thing was. I guess he arguably took that vampire narrative and destroyed it, and just went, "No, I'm going to kill these people."
She's not just a weak, the damsel in distress.
Yeah. And then Twilight pushed it back. 20 years in the past.
Yeah, she became a vampire at the end, right? Spoilers.
Did she?
Yeah.
Oh,
to save her, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I actually did watch them all. I thought they'd get better. But
okay.
I'm sorry. I know there's people who really love Twilight series, and I don't want to make fun of you. Everyone deserves.
No, it is a film.
Everyone deserves a guilty pleasure.
No, totally. Yeah. I mean, but we can subjectively say that it's not.
Good.
It's not good. And same, with the books and stuff. Again, I've not read it, but I've heard that it's not the best written, but whatever.
Bit of guilt. Yeah. Everyone's got it.
So I think, Buffy was very instrumental to that vampire storytelling. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Have you seen the film?
Yes.
Same.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure I saw it before the show came out too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was fun, but it was too campy. Apparently, that's what the director said. Let's not talk about the director, but and that's why he made it more scary. And I think that's what I liked about it as well. It's like that really spooky, like proper scary vampire. That's what I want. Yeah. If we were to look for vampires today, like films today, I want more of that underworld, more of like Blade, but like even scarier though.
Okay.
What do you think?
I would want the first one. However, I think what I would like to see more is. To be honest, going back to that narrative of the harmful man, I don't mind seeing stories like that, and I think it's a good reminder that there are people out there that can be dangerous, and using the vampire storytelling as a backdrop to cover that, I think is a good idea. I think seeing a female in that role would be quite refreshing, which we haven't seen so far. So I think that would be my preference. Like, well, what about a female vampire story? But also, if they do the female vampire story, I would like for them to do it properly. So a lot of the time we have the femme fatale type thing. I wish they don't go down that road, but instead just give it a really good crack and make it respectful.
It'd be interesting actually, because you can also look at maybe they want to have I don't know if this is sexist, but like to have a child, for example, and vampires can't do that.
That's right. Yeah.
That'd be like an interesting theme. I mean, I don't really care about baby themes, but that might be interesting to watch. But yeah, I want like very action, and I would like a lead female vampire. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe like not a sexy female vampire.
Yeah, just your average looking. Just an average looking person.
And how does she get her conquest?
That's all the time we have for today.
Just want to mention that we do a podcast. It's called Rewind and Rethink. You can find it anywhere where you find your podcasts. And we'd love to contact you on our social media. So you can follow us there on Rewind Rethink.
My name is Saj.
I'm Alice.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks.